Welcome to part 2 of my series reviewing all 3 Lord of the Rings films.
Ah, it's you.
Look, I'm just gonna cut right to the chase. Despite the title of this video being a question, there's just no use pretending like there's a chance the Two Towers doesn't hold up today. Like its predecessor and its sequel, it's one of the greatest films ever made, and that's gonna be a fact long after anyone watching this is dead. And yes, that includes you, person watching this in the year 2256. With that said, there's still a lot to say about certain specific aspects of the film and whether they hold up in 2022. Let's jump right in. This movie takes a lot of things to an incredible next step, using Fellowship as a jumping off point without overshadowing the elements that made Fellowship so great. One of the elements that helps the film take that next step is Gollum. Holy shit, what a character.
We ought to hate Gollum. He's putting the whole quest for the future Middle-earth in peril. And yet we feel compassion for him. We feel pity.
And that is incredibly powerful as a piece of characterization.
Obviously, the writing is all Tolkien, but adapting a character for the screen brings an entirely new dimension to them, especially one as fantastical as Gollum. His story as a tragic character and foil to Frodo comes from Tolkien, but this incredible thing that we see on screen is an amalgam of several creative masters. Tolkien is joined by the incredible performance work by Andy Serkis, the masterful direction by one Peter Jackson, and the groundbreaking work of a small New Zealand special effects studio. Gollum's look, for the most part, holds up pretty well. I'm not going to pretend like he couldn't be done better today, but he still looks and feels pretty good. I will say it looks to me as though the team at Weta went for a fairly stylized, almost a little cartoonish interpretation with the design. I think that because they went with a stylized look, it lends to it having a more timeless feel to it than if they attempted a more realistic design. So in that regard, despite the 20-year-old CG effects, Gollum visually holds up fairly well. I also really love him as a character.
And there is something in Smeagol still that lets the audience know, and Frodo, that indicates to us he can be still redeemed, that there is something in him that is likeable and is of us.
He's obviously a villain, he's vile and gross, but there are many reasons to give him sympathy, which the movie plays with in excellent ways, and his centuries of life have given him a cleverness that makes him incredibly engaging.
We told him to go away, and away he goes, precious! Gone! Smeagol is free!
I love how Frodo almost redeems him, but he's eventually pulled back.
Master!
I really enjoyed the scene where he and Sam discuss Gollum by the creek. It's where the movie makes it clear why Frodo is showing so much sympathy toward this wretched creature.
And he's very much the alter ego of Frodo, and Frodo in this particular movie comes to recognize that because he sees in Gollum what his destiny is going to be unless this ring can be destroyed.
Gollum is very much a lens into Frodo's future if he's not able to resist the temptation of the ring.
The ring was entrusted to me. It's my task. Mine. My own. Can't you hear yourself? Don't you know who you sound like?
And because Frodo already feels immense pressure from the ring, he needs to know that its addictive effects aren't permanent, that he can be saved from its evil effects.
I want to help him, Sam. Why? Because I have to believe he can come back.
They actually shot a scene where you literally see the Gollum-like person Frodo might become if the ring succeeds in corrupting him, but they ended up cutting it out.
It was just like Faramir seeing a vision of what the ring was about to do to Frodo, and it was going to help, show him the power of the ring, but it just felt like it would confuse people to put it in there.
For the most part, Gollum was mocapped by Andy Serkis, but for some shots they did it all manually. You'd think they'd have done that for the shot where Gollum is flinging himself down the creek to snag a fish, but no, Serkis fucking did this himself. And this wasn't shot on a warm summer day. Oh no, this was done on a snowy mountain in the dead of winter.
We got the effects guys to bring out their big fans. We got every heater we could find. And we had the local fire departments up there with their fire trucks hosing down the snow, so we managed to melt away enough of the snow and ice in a couple hours.
Really a testament to the resolve of everyone who worked on this project.
It's kind of the way the whole movie was, because there wasn't anything that anybody wasn't willing to try We never just walked away from something because it was a little more difficult or...
I talked about this in my Fellowship review, but man, everyone really gives like 250% on this project, and you can really feel it. I can't off the top of my head think of another project, certainly in modern times, where everyone involved's efforts feel so palpable.
People used to come down on the motion capture stage and go, you realise you're making film history here.
It's worth mentioning the gigantic risk they took with the Gollum character.
If Gollum didn't work, it all would have just fallen apart. It would have been like a house of cards.
If Gollum wasn't believable, if he fundamentally didn't work, then you were going to kill not just the Two Towers, but the Return of the King.
I mean, yeah, he's right. Like, what if Gollum looked terrible, or if Andy Serkis's performance was a modicum less than perfect? What if people didn't like his weird voice that was just him talking like this?
There's no promise you can make that I can trust.
It all hinged on him, and a character like this hadn't really been attempted before. Well, I guess there was Jar Jar, and even then, famously, George Lucas knew of the importance of that CG character.
Jar Jar is a key to all this. If we get Jar Jar working, because he's a funnier character than we've ever had in any of the movies before.
The one thing that we're obviously going to deliver, and it's obvious we are, just from seeing, is we're in a sort of ILM or digital domain level of quality, probably better. I mean, there's every expectation that Gollum is going to be better than Jar Jar Binks, just in terms of his realism and his lip sync and everything else, you know. I mean, we're aiming at that level.
Point is, it's a risk that really paid off because this rendition of Gollum has already become a classic character of modern cinema.
Dobby likes me. Dobby's a f***ing
The film's other characters are also handled fairly well. You get good stuff from Frodo as the ring begins to take its hold, and we see Sam's relationship with him grow and change. The warrior party spends most of the film just fighting, although some character moments do manage to come through.
I'm on 17! I have no pointy yet, outscoring me!
Merry and Pippin have their own story as well, but it's definitely the least fleshed out. I generally prefer the theatrical cuts of these films due to their better pacing, but their scenes in the extended cuts of the film do a lot to expand their story and characters, so I wish there was a way to incorporate some more of that in the theatrical cut.
What was it like working with the tree?
He could be a real...
That is true.
Stop squeezing my balls!
I noticed that Gandalf, oddly, feels like he's barely in the film at all, which I don't think I really picked up on in past viewings.
It's almost like a cameo, really. I mean, Gandalf's appearance in The Two Towers is like an extended cameo to some degree. He's about, he doesn't arrive till late and he's about to disappear for a huge part of the film until the very end. So
I found that the film's themes of nature and industry resonated with me as well as a viewer in 2022.
one of the themes that Tolkien cared a lot about was the environment.
What's making that noise?
Tolkien hated industry, he hated factories, and this is his revenge in this story because the trees, the walking, moving Ents, which they're called, they literally attack the factories. They decide enough is enough. We're not going to be chopped down and used for firewood anymore. We're just going to fight back.
Obviously, Tolkien had no idea about anthropogenic climate change, so his fears and discomfort came from a different place. But in regard to the film holding up, I think that this theme will resonate with a lot of people coming from this new perspective as well. Between this film and Fellowship, I will say that I think I prefer the structure and script to Fellowship more.
I think the creation of The Lord of the Rings was actually an embarrassment.
In the behind the scenes, they discuss a lot about how this was the hardest script to write, and I think that does come through in the final product.
But it was tough. This was the toughest of the three stories for me to tell.
The Two Towers script was always going to be somewhat sacrificed.
She turned to me and she said, film 2 is going to be the hardest film. It has no beginning, it has no end.
It's not bad by any means, and I'm sure crafting a film with 3 huge concurrent stories that don't really intersect is a huge challenge.
Now in Two Towers, you're following 3 fellowships and cutting away between the 3 of them. You know, it's just by the very idea of numbers, it's become a lot more complicated.
The original book actually split these stories entirely, with the stories of Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, and Merry and Pippin occurring in one half, and then it rewinds and tells the story of Frodo, Sam, and Gollum separately, rather than intersecting them as the film does. I think my single biggest issue with the film script, other than it, again, not making clear what the One Ring really does.
The ring? Yeah, the ring of power. Frodo's got it. It's he wears it around his neck.
What? Why was it his mum's?
Is actually with the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Big silence.
Not the sequence itself, it's awesome and we'll get to it in a minute, but more so that the only reason they win is through a couple of Deus Ex Machinas, which I generally find to be a little, I don't know, simplistic, convenient, however you want to describe it. In the context of the film, Theoden intends to hold Helm's Deep against 10,000 orcs with just a few hundred soldiers, half of whom are children or elderly. They kind of just randomly get some help from some elves, which it's worth mentioning that this is not something that happens in the books.
Of course, the elves don't actually come to Helm's Deep at all in the book, do they?
No, they definitely
So can you
don't.
explain yourself here? Why?
This was you.
Me? No, why did you girls?
You wanted it.
Peter's idea.
This was a Peter Jackson idea that we had to make work.
He forced us to write all
He
these scenes
did.
with elves in them. It was terrible.
This was
We said
actually...
the fans are going to hate it. And he said, I don't care about the fans.
Oh, I did not.
And Peter Jackson, my precious, who do you think you are, you f***ing hack? Shame on you! Shame on you! Go f*** yourself!
Which then buys them just enough time for Gandalf to return with some banished Rohan soldiers, turning the tide of the battle. This is a very minor complaint, but it's always stuck with me. Also, I never really fully believed these three's motivation to give their lives to the people of Rohan. Like, does Legolas really have nothing better to do? Merry and Pippin are safe, the ring is out of his jurisdiction, so why is he still helping these jokers?
You just threatened because I've got a bigger bow than you. Why am I red?
It's not the bows that count, it's the arrows. You get what I mean?
I'll admit, I'm really just nitpicking here cause, like, what? Otherwise this video would be 30 seconds long and would entail me saying that this movie is just mostly perfect, which it is, but that wouldn't be nearly as interesting, nor would it get me that delicious ad revenue that my channel is not eligible to get. Seriously, I've only got 87 subscribers right now, and YouTube requires you to have 1 freaking thousand before they pay you for uploading content. Anyway, let's talk about why Helm's Deep is so awesome. For one, it looks incredible. For a battle scene from 2002, it's still a visual treat. I want to keep this video under a decade long, so I won't detail all of the unbelievable work that went into making the sequence as incredible as it is, but just know that they used every trick in the book and that they didn't compromise anywhere.
There's no compromise. It's not like, oh, well, okay, we'll shoot it anyway. It's no. Come on, get it right.
I can't emphasize this enough. Every single shot is its own little miracle, its own little work of art that is meticulously crafted.
Helm's Deep? Hell. That's it. 3 months of night shoots. It was a long haul.
And when put together in a sequence, you truly feel the magic of the film format come through. It's a bold sequence for a lot of reasons, not the least of which being because they actually trusted their team to make the scene look good. The fact that it takes place at night in the rain definitely helps cover up what would probably be obvious compositing and outdated CG, but due to the many careful decisions made by the production team, it all still looks really good. My mind kept drifting toward Game of Thrones Season 8. Very minor spoilers, I guess, but there's an important battle that takes place at night, and it got a lot of flack, deservedly so, for being just ugly and muddy looking. You can barely make anything out for the entire episode. If only they got the incredible folks at Weta to handle this sequence, because their work on Helm's Deep shows that when you, Well, that aside, the Battle for Helm's Deep sequence absolutely holds up today. You can really feel the tension and fear that these people are feeling in this moment, and the execution of the sequence is second to none. In this most recent viewing, I was also kind of off-put by the way they kept cutting away from the battle to the Merry and Pippin story. To me, it kind of pulled me out of the battle. You know, it gave me a little bit of breath in what should have been a completely breathtaking sequence. Like, it pulls me back from the edge of my seat, so to speak. Come up with a third analogy and then rewrite. Don't include this line.
I know a few people got irritated by the fact that we interrupted the battle by cutting away to the Entmoot. But in a way, that irritation was deliberate, because the whole point of it is that there's this desperate fight happening where our heroes are just fighting for their lives, and some miles away there's this group of trees trying to figure out what to do, and that kind of is deliberately frustrating, and we wanted to actually make audiences feel that in the movie.
In general, the special effects in the film are very good, even in 2022. Some of the really heavy CG elements, like the sequence with all of the wargs, are beginning to show their age, but like I said in my Fellowship review, this was the first time a lot of these shots could even be attempted. Take the shot of Legolas jumping onto the horse. Looks pretty fakey in 2022, but imagine this film was made before the era of CG. A shot like this would be impossible in one static image. You'd have to do a million cuts like you were editing a Liam Neeson film.
He'll sort of present these shots and just say, oh, here's just a little shot where we just need to add Legolas jumping onto this horse. And everybody will sit there in dead silence and look at each other like, what does he mean?
There are some places where the compositing is very obvious looking, like I never really loved this shot of Sam falling with the rock, but on the whole, the film still looks really good. Places where the CG and compositing are dated aside, other aspects of the film's visuals hold up perfectly. Like, I really love the shot where Theoden transforms back to his normal self. It looks insanely good. Better than how it would look if it was done today. They'd just do it all in CG so it would look bad and obvious. But here, again, they combined practical effects with the computer technology.
The shot here was done as a very simple morphing. Needed Bernard to go through 3 different makeups, each of which took half a day. So we basically shot him over the course of 2 days as the old makeup, the intermediate, and then the young. He was sort of sitting being in either the makeup chair or in front of the camera for literally for 2 days just to do that 7 or 8 seconds worth of film that we were able to morph with that de-aging.
I always loved the shot of the tower getting destroyed in Osgiliath. Even growing up, I was blown away by how good the CG looked. Like, how the heck did they do that in 2002 with that much fidelity with that many particles? Oh, it's because it's not CG, it's practical. They actually smashed a real tower that they fucking built.
Paul Van Ormond built the building. Moritz, our onstage engineer, built a spring-powered catapult. We built a concrete rock, and we fired the rock at the building. Just think of all that dust and flying debris that you would have had to animate that we got right there on the camera first time out.
So examples like that really do help the film hold up visually because you don't see as many effects like this done practically anymore. Like with Fellowship, the set work and costumes are all impeccable, like you just couldn't do it better today even with an unlimited budget. The painstaking detail really goes a long way to sell you this world. I really wish other projects at this scale were handled with this much care. Let's see, what else can I complain about? I guess it's a little weird that this Uruk-hai makes reference to a menu.
Looks like meat back on the menu, boys.
Like, weren't these guys born, like, an hour ago? Kinda weird. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. I'm saying it. This movie fucking sucks. All in all, The Two Towers absolutely holds up today. Certain aspects of the visuals are beginning to show their age, but most of the visual elements look perfect, executed in a way that will likely prevent time from punishing the film too much, even for you, viewer in 2256. Gollum is a perfect microcosm of a miracle in this huge miracle tapestry that is Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, and the Battle for Helm's Deep puts war sequences done today to absolute shame. I can't stress this enough. This film is a masterpiece.
In 20 years' time, when you look back, you'll say, Lord of the Rings is a masterpiece.
And my minor gripes aren't going to affect that. What are some of your favorite elements of The Two Towers? What holds up in your eyes? What doesn't? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.
I don't know why I'm here. I should be in bed, in a real bed. Get some real sleep.